Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, and welcome back to this next video. And this is the 16th video in the series of videos on immunology. And this particular video is the part 3 on the pathogen recognition. In my previous video, I've told you about the pathogen recognition, that we usually classify the pathogens into two classes. One, they are the intracellular pathogens, and I told you that viruses that are an important example of these intracellular pathogens because they spend majority of their life cycle residing inside the host cells. And I've told you, I gave you different examples of the viruses, and I've told you that these are like very small in size. Like if you talk about the influenza virus, it's only 100 nanometer. If you talk about the hepatitis C virus, only 50 nanometer. And I've told you that one of the important strategies that is used to deal with this kind of the intracellular pathogen is the identification of the infected host cells. And the strategy that is used to clear these particular infected host cells is the sacrifice of these infected host cells. And this sacrifice is, you can say, is the only way to truly eradicate the intracellular pathogens from the body. And in general, this sacrifice is good for the whole of the organism. Although in some cases, it can cause disruption to the normal function. And I'll give you the example of the HIV, where a particular type of the T cells, which is known as the helper T cells, their number that is going to decrease. And these helper cells are very important in guiding the behavior of the other immune cells, including the B cells. But that is one of the common strategy that is used for the intracellular pathogens. Now, in this particular video, I want to focus on the extracellular pathogens because there are a variety of the extracellular pathogens that infects the living organism, say for example the human beings. Now, in this particular case, in case of the extracellular pathogens, if I give you some of the important examples, fungi would be an important extracellular pathogen. Another important extracellular pathogen, that would be the bacteria, different kind of the pathogenic bacteria. And then we have got these large parasites. So these organisms usually do not reside inside the host cells. They are usually present outside the cells. Therefore, we call them as the extracellular pathogens. Now, how to deal with these extracellular pathogens? Now, the immune response about these extracellular pathogens, they primarily rely on the cell surface receptors or the soluble recognition molecule. If you remember, I've told you that the host is going to produce the different kind of the molecules that help them recognize the pathogens in the body. And the cell surface receptors, that is one of the important example of these recognition molecules. And the soluble recognition molecule, that is another important example from the molecules produced by the host cells to tackle these pathogenic organisms. So when you talk about these extracellular pathogens, they are actually recognized by the cell surface receptors primarily, or by the soluble recognition molecules. Now, what they do is that these soluble recognition molecules in particular, they are going to probe the extracellular spaces of the body for these pathogenic organisms, these extracellular pathogenic organisms. Now, in this case, the B cells, so when you talk about the cells, that means you're talking about the cell surface receptors present on these B cells, and these receptors on these B cells are going to recognize these extracellular pathogens. Secondly, if you talk about the soluble recognition molecules, the antibodies produced by these B cells, they are very important soluble recognition molecules, and these B cells and the antibodies produced, they are actually going to play a major role in this particular extracellular pathogen recognition. Like if this is the B cells, for example, they can express the antibodies on their surface, but they can also release them into the body, into the extracellular species. Now, these antibodies, the importance of these antibodies is that these antibodies can squeeze into the spaces in the body where the B cell themselves may not be able to reach because of their size. and this entry of or the squeezing of this antibody into these spaces, they are going to help identify the pathogens hiding in these out of reach places. So they are going to recognize the extracellular pathogen in those particular areas where the B cells themselves cannot enter. Now, the large parasites, those strategies, they are actually used for the bacteria and the fungi. What about you? When we talk about these large parasites, they are one of the major problem because they are too big for the phagocytic cells to envelope. Now, in this particular case, the immune cells, they are going to get activated. So what these immune cells do, they are going to deposit the toxic substances on these large parasites, or they can actually secrete products that induce expulsion, and this expulsion is one of the, you can say, better strategies to get rid of these large parasites. And if you look at the examples of these expulsions, like coughing would be one of the important example. The sneezing, that would be another important example of this expulsion. Vomiting would be another example. So this is, you can say, one of the strategies adapted by the body to get rid of the larger pathogenic, larger extracellular pathogens. Now, if you talk about the immune system, it is important to keep in mind that the complexities of the mammalian immune response, a single solution does not exist for all pathogens. So, a specific immune response is generated against specific pathogen, and there is not a single solution to deal with the bacteria. For example, the same strategy cannot be applied for the fungi or the parasites. So, distant immune response are generated against specific pathogens. So, therefore, we say that there is not a single solution that exists for all of these pathogens. But if you look at these immune responses against these different pathogenic organisms, so these immune pathways, they carry out their jobs with considerable overlap in structure and in function. For example, you will be able to see the antibodies, for example, against the bacteria, but you can also see antibodies against the viruses, for example. So there is a considerable overlap in structure and in function of the immune response against different pathogenic organisms, but there is not a single solution that fit to all of the pathogenic organisms. So if you like the video, please subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell, do comment on the video if you have any comments, if you have any questions, and do share it with your friends. I'll see you in the next video.